wherever you are.
We have a wonderful show for you today. It is June 12th, 2013. And we are going to be discussing today distilled waters of varying types and their effects on the body.
And the importance of water itself, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely.
The extreme importance of water in our lives.
Yeah, water is something we don't really pay attention to, I feel like, as much, especially in westernized processed culture, where everything's about fast food and soda and what tastes good and what gives you energy and whatnot. So yeah, this is a show I've been wanting to do for a while now. I've been doing a lot of research on this whole idea of distilled water. To give you guys a little bit of my background, when I originally started waking up, it was because of a movie I saw called The Gerson Miracle. And in the Gerson Miracle, it talks about the Gerson therapy, which Dr. Gerson discovered back in the 20s, in 1928. And he discovered that if he eliminated bad, quote-unquote, bad foods or foods that contributed to health problems and introduced healthy foods, more importantly, living fruit and vegetable juices, that the body would naturally start to cure itself of pretty much any condition, with the exception of blunt trauma or broken bones, things like that.
And so, sounds almost like starving the disease.
Yeah, you could say that. It would be very similar to starving out the disease. Basically, let's get right into this here. The way your body works is your body is one of the three branches of your total beingness. Your total beingness is a mind-body-spirit complex. So your body is part of that. And your body as well is your body's like the physical representation of your true self. I've talked about this before. So what I mean by that is, let's think about it like this. So you could have this idea in your mind that you're a healthy person, but no matter how much you BS yourself in your mind, your body's going to always tell you the truth. That's kind of the general concept. So this is one of the ways that your body works. Your body, it works in a detoxification and consumption cycle, which is the natural cycle of pretty much all life. All things in nature go through processes of cycles. So if you look out in nature, a plant produces food during the day when the sun's there, and then at night it goes into a different cycle of rejuvenation, healing, whatnot. Same thing with animals. Animals go through periods of eating. For example, if you think about big cats, whatnot, and carnivores, they usually eat a very large meal, and then they'll go through several hours of sleeping and not eating to process what they ate. So this idea of consumption and detoxification is really an idea that is harmonized or mirrored in nature a lot. For example, in plants, to pontificate this even more, to make this point even more stringent here, anytime you're growing a plant, usually for the maximum effect of a plant, you want to go through what's called a flushing cycle, where you don't feed the plant any fertilizer or anything. You just flush clean, pure water through it for a period of time. This will remove impurities and purify the plant, and then the plant will be much more healthy afterwards. The other thing you can think of as well is think about your car. What do you think? What do you do every so often with your car? You usually flush the fluids, you change the oil, you put in new fluids, that kind of thing, right? So if you had this idea that you could just drive around with your car and never actually flush the fluids, never actually detox your car, what do you think is going to happen? Eventually your car is not going to work right, and it's going to start to have problems, right? Well, that same logic applies to the body. And you could also make the argument to the mind, but we're really going to be focusing on the body for this show.
Kind of like clearing the cache
exactly.
on your browser.
Exactly.
Clearing the cache and cookies.
Yep, there's so many examples. Yeah. Like clearing the cache is a perfect example. We've all had instances where the browser stops working and wondering what the hell's going on, and we have to
Come on, all you AOL people out there, you know what we're talking
Yeah. Right. Right. We used to work in the tech field, so doing tech support.
Yeah, and dealing with computers is very similar to computers.
It's very similar to the body, right?
To a body.
It's yeah, exactly. You have memory, virtual memory, all this stuff. Okay. So let's talk about consumption in general. So when you consume something, when you eat food or you drink something, your body processes that. Even when you're drinking water, your body's processing that liquid. So if you're eating food, depending on the quality and caliber of the food, there's a certain proportion of that food that your body needs the nutrients from, and then the rest it's going to expel. Now, the expellation of what it doesn't need may be because it's actually toxic and it needs to get rid of it, or because it just simply doesn't need as much as what it has. And we're going to be getting into this idea of what waste really is when we discuss one of the distilled waters, which is urine. Your own urine or human urine, which is a kind of an interesting topic for a lot of people. So anyway, when you consume something, your body needs to have a process where it gets rid of the stuff it doesn't need. And depending on what the food is that you eat, especially if you're in a Western modernized diet, the proportion of toxic elements, meaning things that your body has to get rid of because they are actually toxic, is usually higher. So let's talk about this a little bit. What is detoxification? How does it actually work? Well, your body is an amazing processing plant which is constantly producing beneficial substances and eliminating unneeded substances from the body. The digestive system and its related organs have multiple functions. The body can only detox itself when these organs are not busy doing anything else, for example, eating food. Therefore, the mechanism of detoxification is the ceasing of consumption to allow these processes to switch over into detox mode. So, to talk about the Gerson treatment for a little bit, when you're talking about juicing and eliminating these bad foods, the bad foods are foods that may cause the body to work harder. For example, meats, fats, dairy products, whatnot, that are high in animal protein counts require a lot of energy for your body to process. So if you eat a steak, your body is going to sit there and devote almost all of its energy to making sure that steak is processed, which can take, depending on how it's cooked, the quality of the meat, etc., can take potentially days or even weeks to fully get out of your body. So basically what the distilled waters does in detoxification is distilled water enhances all of the body's process in multiple ways. For example, distilled water, or distilled waters, or distilled liquids, which I'm going to refer to it now to not confuse anybody. Distilled liquids enhance all the body's natural detoxification process. Your body is generally negatively ionically charged, so it's negatively charged. Distilled liquids are also negatively charged. And the toxins and byproducts that your body is trying to get rid of are positively charged. So when you drink distilled liquids, you're fueling the body with a liquid medium which enhances the charge state of your body. So it's kind of like charging your body with the charge that it actually uses on a natural level to get rid of these things. So that's why distilled liquids are so important for this process of detoxification. This is also the idea of alkalized and acidic food. So if people who are into alternative treatments and whatnot in food may have heard of this idea of alkalizing your body. And what you're alkalizing your body, what you're actually doing, is you're increasing the negative charge state of your body overall, which enhances this process of detoxification. So when you're actually in a detox cycle, your body switches gears, as I was mentioning. And when you stop eating, for example, let's say you ate something that would make your body very acidic and was filled with a lot of toxins, like you went and you got a fast food meal from McDonald's or something like that. Well, when you eat that food, the burger and the bun is going to make your body very acidic because the bun's going to be processed into sugar very quickly in your digestive system. And that meat is going to cause your body to release a lot of digestive fluids that is going to cause your stomach acidity to be very high. But more importantly, it's not the stomach acidity which causes the acidification of your body. It's everything in the food and whatnot that your body is being released. So, and it is the metabolic switch that your body goes through to digest the food in general. So when you eat the food initially, the first hour after eating the food, your body's going through an intensive process of dealing with this massive dose of sugar that it has and trying to process this food. Then as food it goes through this process. Eventually, it's going to reach a breaking point where it's processed enough of it, and it's going to start to try to go back to some level of normalcy. So it's going to try to enter a detox phase, and that normally doesn't happen for several hours afterwards, depending on the meal. For a McDonald's meal, because it's extremely intense, I'd wager to guess that it's going to take a really long time for your body to start to get back to where it needs, unless you start adding in beneficial processes. So what I'm getting at with this is, think about the food that you eat. The food that you eat affects your body in a very profound way. But if you're not used to thinking about it and you're not used to listening to your body, then you're going to not necessarily have a process for understanding this process of detoxification, which you can actually feel happening once you get more acclimated and aware of your body in general. So again, distilled liquids, which I'm going to take the time now to discuss them briefly, just an overview. There's 4 main distilled liquids. I'm going to rattle them off in the order of best to worst.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
I'm not. Did we go over what a distilled liquid is before we go over the different kinds?
No. What I wanted to kind of do is just generalize about what detoxification process and whatnot was, and then I wanted to introduce this idea of what a distilled liquid actually was. Then we can further expand on that concept. So it's perfect timing for that question. Divine time. Okay, so there's 4 categories you could break up the distilled liquids. The first and the most beneficial and the most controversial is human urine, or your own urine. And again, I'm going to get into the details of all this a little bit later. Then we have the plant and fruit juices, which should be organic, of course, or at least low pesticide count. Then we have mist and morning dew, and mechanical water distillation. So basically, when you buy water distilled in the supermarket, or you have a water distiller. So those are the 4 sources of distilled liquids. Briefly, auto urine, human urine, is actually the best source of distilled water for several reasons, and I'm going to go into in depth in this a little bit later in the show. But despite the controversial aspect to drinking your own urine, there is an amazing health benefit that can be gained by this, and I'm actually going to be posting in the links to the show a book that was written by a doctor who specialized in urine therapy. And this book was written, I want to say, back in the 30s to 40s. Don't quote me on the exact time, but what's important about it is this is before a more modern medical aspect was developed, and doctors were a little bit more open to these alternative treatments back then. The medical profession in general, although right now it's very crystallized and set, the further back in time you go, the more realistic it gets, I guess you could say. So anyway, this guy wrote this book, and he treated multiple conditions, almost anything you can possibly think of, with the exception of blunt trauma and broken bones, using this urine therapy method of auto urine, and basically going on fasts where you just do nothing but drink your own urine for some period of time. Plant and fruit juices, that's basically just juicing, plant and fruit juices. There's a lot of juicing culture going around right now, especially in the health markets and natural areas, so that's something that shouldn't be too foreign to people. Mist and morning dew and rain. It's a fairly simple idea, but basically the earth produces its own distilled liquids. All a distilled liquid is 100% pure water. So when you have mist, what mist is water evaporated. Now, depending on where you are on the planet and the level of pollution, because there's a lot of chemtrails and whatnot going on, I'm not so sure you'd want to necessarily start drinking rainwater or water that you collect outside, but it's certainly possible, and you may be able to look into seeing if that's a possibility for you. And then finally, which is the one that's the easiest to understand, is just mechanically distilled water, which is stuff that you can buy in the supermarket, and you can get machines for it. Mechanically distilled water is literally just water that was boiled away and recondensed, and they usually have some type of a carbon filter that they filter through it, because in the boiling process, some of the impurities can actually be carried over in the evaporation. So, all right, let's get back into the detoxification process. Because when we're talking about the reason distilled liquids are so amazing is because they enhance the detoxification process. So let me touch on this a little bit. In our current westernized culture, there is really no emphasis on detoxification at all. All the emphasis is really on what you need to consume, what pills you need to take in order to treat your condition. So when you're sick, there's not really a process of detoxing. Think about it like your car, right? Let's say your car is having trouble with its engine. Imagine if the mechanic just kept loading stuff into the car and you never bothered to flush the engine and rebuild the engine, or flush the fluids and get rid of the bad radiator fluid, get rid of the transmission fluid, whatnot. The same concept with your body. If you're having a disease, dis-ease, malfunction, regardless of what the doctors or the specific ailment may be, whether it's lung cancer or headaches and migraines or cataracts or gout or whatever, almost all localized disease is caused by a holistic problem. And almost usually it's caused by what you eat or what you drink and your bodily habits. So when we're talking about distilled liquids and their benefit, it's really discussing the enhancing effect that it will have on the detoxification process. So let's just talk a little bit about your body. Now, your body is an amazing thing. It has the capacity to store toxins in such a profound way. You can really think about it like if you took sugar. I'm going to keep going back to the car analogy because it's really good. If you took sugar and you poured it in an engine, the car would be toast, right? You'd have to do major work on the car. But with the human body, you can literally feed it toxic substances for years, and you won't die. It'll just start storing these toxins in whatever place it possibly can. And then eventually it's going to reach a saturation point, and disease is going to start to manifest itself. So let's look at what these toxins are. So we have organic and inorganic minerals. And when we're talking about toxins that accumulate in the body, we're primarily talking about inorganic mineral deposits, but they can also be other items. I'm going to focus on just the minerals at this point. The running myth with distilled liquids or distilled water in general is that if you drink it, you're going to die eventually because it's going to slowly leach minerals out of your body that you need, and you won't have them eventually. You'll die from lack of electrolytes. Well, the part about leaching minerals out of your body is 100% accurate. The difference is that it only leaches inorganic minerals out of the body and leaves all bioactivated or organic minerals in the body. One of the things that we're going to be discussing when we're talking about urine is that urine is filled with nutrients that are bioactivated. Almost everything inside urine has some type of a biological component to it that your body can get something out of. So mineral salts, there's so many different mineral salts that your body needs to function properly. Potassium salts, sodium salts, magnesium salts. They're all over the place in your body, and your body needs them. So when we're talking about this process of detoxification and removing toxins and minerals, we're talking about inorganic minerals, things that are removed naturally. So I'm gonna give another example to help people visualize what we're talking about here. Everybody, I'm sure, has had an experience when they were younger where they grew sugar on string. So basically what you did, if you've never done this before, is you take some water and you dissolve a bunch of sugar in the water. So you just keep mixing the sugar around. Eventually the sugar dissolves in the water, right? So then what you do is you introduce something for the sugar to stick to, like a piece of string, and you just put it in the water. And after a day or two, the sugar crystal is going to stick to that string in the water, and you're going to have a deposit of sugar on the string. So let's think of using that concept. Your body is the water, basically. Your body, all throughout your life, it deposits toxins. So when it reaches its saturation point, when you start consuming toxins, it's going to start to get rid of as much as it can. But if it can't, because either you're not giving it time to detox because you're constantly eating, or because the foods that you do eat are overloaded and you don't get enough of neutral things or nothing to allow that process to go through, then you're going to accumulate these toxins. That's exactly what happens in the body. As your body accumulates toxins, it reaches a saturation point, and then disease starts to manifest. For example, gout. Gout is a condition whereby crystals that form in the body from metabolites from your food crystallize in your joints, in the fluid in your joints. And then those crystals cause pain in your joints. So that is exactly what I'm talking about with this process of sugar and string and whatnot.
Like kidney stones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the other example I was going to say. Kidney soda is the same thing. Kidney stones are primarily caused by you drinking soda. That's phosphoric acid, and the soda dissolves the calcium in your bones. And then that calcium byproduct, that metabolite, has to go somewhere. And unless you're have a good process of detoxification, it's going to start to deposit those toxins wherever it can. Your body deposits toxins in between your joints. It deposits them in your skin cells. It deposits them in your hair. It deposits them in your eyes. It deposits them anywhere it possibly can.
Yeah, I had a family member once who, years ago, had a deposit on their back right shoulder. It was of grease.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so there you go. So your body, as I was mentioning earlier, is an amazing thing. You can beat the hell out of it. You can feed it horrible things, and it'll still keep on ticking. So when you let's think back to the sugar and the string. So the water is saturated with sugar, just like your body. It's saturated with toxins. Now let's imagine that you pour out the water, and you replace the water with clean, pure, distilled water, and you put that sugar crystal back in. Well, after a few days, what's going to happen to the sugar? It's going to dissolve back into the water, right? And that's exactly what happens when you detox. That's exactly what distilled liquids do. Is you're reintroducing into your body the core substance that your body uses to do everything: water, distilled liquids, pure H2O. And then that water starts to work its way into all the little nooks and crannies of your body, and it starts to get rid of all these toxins. It's one of the reasons why if you're on a juicing regimen, especially an intense juicing regimen, going back to the Gerson therapy, they usually have to do coffee enemas because the amount of toxins that start to get released through the body is very large. And you need to detox them and remove them. So that water distilled liquids in general enhance that process by adding clean, pure water into the body and allowing these mineral deposits to start to get leached out. So basically, what, as I was mentioning earlier, when the distilled liquids start to get consumed, your body's going to release these toxins, and you're going to have to start to probably have some type of detox symptom. So this is a good thing in a sense because it means that it's actually working. Your body's starting to get rid of this stuff. And depending on how bad the condition is that you're suffering from, you may have really intense effects. So one thing I want to mention on this is a case in this book that I was mentioning about this urologist or urine. I can't remember the term used, but he's basically a urine therapy doctor. He practices urine therapy. This was back in the 30s and 20s and whatnot. And he has a case of a woman with Bright's disease who she was very sick. I won't go into the exact details, but I'll focus mainly on the main points. He had started her in a regimen of urine fasting. Just like juicing or whatnot, what you want to do is just completely eliminate all consumption and just focus on distilled liquids. So his method was using auto urine or urine, and he also used external use where he rubbed it into the body, which is something we'll talk about here in a little bit. After about 19 days, one of the nurses that she was working with suggested that because she hadn't experienced any of the symptoms in a few days, that she started to introduce foods back into her diet. And because on the urine fast, you literally do nothing besides drink all of your urine that you pass and water periodically. So literally within hours of her drinking this cup of raw organic carrot juice, she had a reaction. She started to break out in a rash, and she had a reversion, and she basically reverted back to the original condition. She had to start the whole treatment over again. So the reason why that's important is this idea of detoxification and rejuvenation of your body. Your body is a dynamic entity. It's constantly going through cycles and fluctuations. And when you're in this process of detoxification, all of your body changes itself to configure towards this process. It's just like if you've ever heard of when people were being liberated back in World War II from the concentration camps and they hadn't eaten in a very long time. You can't just start feeding these people, cheese and meat and sausage and all really intense, heavy foods because their body's literally going to be shocked, and depending on the level of their harmonization in their body, if their body is already out of whack and it gets shocked, then you're going to start to have really intense physical symptoms manifest. So paying attention to your body and being aware of your body is really very important when you start to think about this idea of rejuvenation, detoxification. All right. So we've done a lot of talking about this detoxing and how the body detoxes. So now we're going to get into the 4 sources of distilled liquids. And even though there's 4 main sources, really the 2 that we're going to be discussing here is auto urine and plant juices, and then contrast it with just plain distilled water as the kind of control. So let's just, before we get into auto urine, I want to just discuss some general facts about urine in general, because if you're in the Western society, and really it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to have this bias when it comes to urine. Urine is a waste. It's not meant to be done anything besides being in your toilet and going down the drain, and that's it. That's a belief and a concept, but is there any basis for that in reality? And if you're brave enough and you start looking into this, you'll find that there's almost no basis for it in reality whatsoever. So, urine itself is not a waste. It is the overflow of excess nutrients of your body needed. Antibodies, beneficial hormones, salts, plasma, and whatnot. As a matter of fact, if you took blood plasma and you added the basic things that the kidneys produce, like urea and whatnot, urine is just blood plasma. So urine is essentially exactly what was flowing inside your veins a moment ago when you passed it out. It just has a few added constituents that are added by the kidneys. The actual process for excreting waste in the body is not through urine. Urine is not a waste. The process of the kidneys is not to excrete waste through the kidneys. It is to remove unneeded constituents. What the blood basically is a biostatic fluid. It's a suspensory fluid that maintains the cells within your body. So think about it like this. If you've ever had any experience working with Petri dishes, a Petri dish is basically a medium, a food medium or a liquid, whatnot, that bacteria can grow in. So your blood is essentially the same thing, and your body maintains a quote-unquote internal ocean of chemicals, salts, fluids, whatnot, to maintain the health of the cells. So what your kidneys are actually doing is a process of constantly attenuating and balancing that internal pH, that internal level of salts and whatnot, salinity levels. It's a constant regulation mechanism. And it's expelling things that it doesn't necessarily need at the time, but aren't waste. There's a big difference. Waste is actually removed from your body by the process of sweat glands. So when you sweat, that's how you actually remove toxic compounds in your body. And you also remove toxic compounds through the bile of your body, through the small intestine. So what happens is your body will take through your bloodstream, your cells will release toxins and whatnot, and those toxins will be circulated to the small intestine, and then the small intestine, using a process, will then have those toxins seep through the intestine in the very same manner that beneficial nutrients come through. So it's a double permeation happening. In addition to that, the bile in your actual intestines, the bile has a magnetic effect in the sense that it attracts toxins, so it accumulates toxins in the bile. One of the reasons that coffee enemas are so beneficial is they enhance this process of waste elimination by the body. When you actually do a coffee enema, more bile is produced by the gallbladder and the liver that is introduced into the small intestine. Then your blood is filtered through this system, and it enhances this process. You can actually filter your blood 15 times 5 times in one 15-minute coffee enema, and it is the equivalent of 24 hours of kidney dialysis. So those two methods of waste elimination are the two big ones. By drinking distilled liquids, you're enhancing both of those processes. The other thing, too, is urine is really the amniotic fluid of your body. So when you're actually in the womb, swimming, you're basically swimming in your mother's internal ocean. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, the internal ocean is essentially blood plasma, and that blood plasma is pretty much urine. So they're all talking about exactly the same basic concept here. In addition to that, when you're in the womb, you are expelling your own urine into the womb. So you're constantly swimming in a bath of basically your mother's urine, which is blood plasma, and amniotic fluid, and your own urine. So when you start to do, or when I was researching the topic of auto urine, one thing that they constantly refer to is that urine is a living liquid, and it pretty much mirrors the rejuvenating capacity that amniotic fluid has. Something that is more modern in times is this idea of stem cells and whatnot. Stem cells being able to switch and attenuate themselves to whatever function that they need to. Well, in the womb, you have a lot of stem cells, and those stem cells are swimming in a bath of fluid, which is essentially basically urine. Okay. And I'm going to talk about some cases here in a little bit with regard to urine in this book especially. I'd strongly suggest reading that. I am going to be posting that in the show notes here. But basically, this person was able to treat horrible burns, gangrene. He even had a condition in his foot where he had some horrible injury in his foot, and the toes of his foot ended up getting smashed into his foot itself, had to get surgically pulled back out. And he used urine compresses and urine soaking in addition to drinking his own urine on a urine fast for a week, and he completely cured his foot, and there were no scars to be seen at all. So really, it's amazing the ability of this substance that your body produces. And let's just talk about this concept of urine in general, or this idea of nutrient reuptake or biofeedback. In nature, some of the best fruits, the best vegetables that are grown, which are usually organically or in the wild, use this process of biofeedback. And what a process of biofeedback I'm referring to is when the leaves fall down from the tree in the forest. The leaves degrade back into the soil, and then the plant or the tree uses the byproducts of basically itself to create and grow again. It's the same basic concept with auto urine, because your own urine contains so much of the things that your body needs already that you're reintroducing those into your system. Some examples of nutrient uptake is the leaves of trees, mothers, and the drinking of milk, although it's not a direct type of a thing. Basically, the mother is producing a substance, a biological substance that contains a lot of the things that the baby needs. And the urine, when you look at it honestly and you remove the bias that it's a waste product and you actually scientifically look at what's in it, there is no waste at all. It's all stuff that your body needs anyway. Okay. So what I want to go ahead and talk about now is some of the nutrients that are actually inside urine. There is a whole assortment of nutrients. There's alanine, arginine, ascorbic acid, allantonin, amino acids, bicarbonate, biotin, calcium, creatine, creatine, DHE, dopamine, epinephrine, folic acid, glucose, glutamic acid, glycine, isol, iodine, iron, magnesium, manganese, melatonin. The list of stuff just goes on and on. I could literally just keep going. Vitamin B6, vitamin B12, zinc, tryptophan, cherosone, and urea. There's just so many beneficial things, not to mention your body's own sexual hormone. So if you're a man, for example, you're going to have your own testosterone inside your own urine, obviously, which can be used to replace, basically, you're doing your own hormone therapy. One thing that happens, one of the things that causes hair loss and a lot of malfunction in the body in general, is the slow depleting of beneficial hormones and processes in the body, because your body is constantly producing beneficial substances. For example, the drug and food industry, or the drug industry, spends billions of dollars every year trying to reverse engineer substances that are found within the body. So the biofeedback effect of auto urine is that it helps replace some of those substances and helps rejuvenate the body from the inside out. For example, just to talk about the beneficial ingredients in urine and the beneficial products that the industry now derives from it, there's $855 million a month are consumed, basically, in products derived from urine and whatnot. Urokinase is a urine ingredient used to treat. It's a miracle blood dissolver. Basically, there's a company. I watched a documentary recently about urine therapy, and there's a guy who makes porta potties, and he has a filter in the porta potty for the urinal portion that absorbs urokinase. And there's no treatment or anything like that. They don't do anything to this chemical. The chemical is literally extracted out of this filter and then put into form that is consumed by the body. So it's literally 100% derived right out of the urine. It's an amazing drug that your body produces, and they've been trying to come up with a way to reverse engineer it, and they can't. So they just pull it right out of the human urine. In Europe and in Italy, almost all of the urinals in public facilities are diverted into processing plants where they derive the beneficial constituents out of the urine in the urinals. There is urea. If you look in almost all hand moisturizers and hand creams, some of the best ones all have urine derivatives in them. Urea is one of them. Urea, one of the reasons why applying urine externally to your body to cure illnesses and whatnot is because your body's going to absorb it just as readily as if you drank it. And you're going to get those effects. Urea is an amazing chemical that actually helps moisten the skin and whatnot. Urine is eye drops, and you take the M away from urine and you get urine eye drops, and it's made from horse urine. So this idea that human urine is a waste product is totally erroneous. There's really no foundation for it in reality. You're sold this idea that urine is nasty and that it's something that you shouldn't consider beneficial. And it's this idea that is really the heart of the thing. Now, admittedly, I'm not 100% within myself okay with just slugging down a glass of my own urine every day, but at the same time, I realize that the source of the trepidation has no basis in reality, and I'm not going to feed into a superstition purely to satisfy my social desire not to feel accepted or whatnot. I'm going to try to transcend that stuff. So I'm going to get into some really good specific uses of urine here. During urine fasting is basically where you discontinue consuming everything but your own urine, 100% of it, every day, and drinking water. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, one of the benefits to this is you enhance the natural detoxification process of your body. So what ends up happening after you start doing this is, after a few days, no matter how horribly disgusting your urine is in the beginning, and in this case book that I would keep mentioning here, there's several cases of people who have absolutely foul, disgusting urine, who drink it because of through the implorement or the suggestion of this urologist, the doctor, not urologist, but a urine practitioner. And within a few days, the urine completely transitions into an almost clear, tasteless liquid. So one thing that is important to realize is that if urine was really a waste, if you kept drinking it, what should happen is it should keep getting more and more toxic, and eventually it would be so toxic that it would kill you, right? But that's not what happens at all. What actually happens is it keeps getting more and more purified to the point where eventually it's so pure that it just resembles water. And what's happening in your body is, think about it, if your urine is kind of like a snapshot was flowing through your blood at the time, then your blood is also equally clean and pure. And that process of removing toxins, just like I was talking about with the sugar crystals and putting in clean, pure water, it's actually starting to remove that stuff from your body. So that is the power of a urine fast. Let's see here. The external uses of urine. Some interesting facts that a lot of people don't know is in the beauty industry, apparently, I'm not there myself, but one of the things that I've read is that in some of these models over in Europe, modeling places in Europe, some of the models, they tell the models to urinate in a bowl before they go on stage and put the fresh urine on their face, because it'll cause the cells in their face to absorb the water, and they'll have a very fresh, clean-looking face. This idea of applying urine externally has a lot of uses. In this book that they talk about, one of the things they talk about is applying urine to wounds, applying urine to burns, and whatnot, and it has a very similar effect as amniotic fluid. So think about it like this. If just try to conceptualize the idea that urine's actually a living liquid. It's like living tissue, basically. It's filled with all the things that your body needs. So when you're trying to heal a wound, you're usually trying to do it, putting things to keep it closed and one on the outside. But if you applied a living fluid on the outside, something that can actually feed it the things that it needs to heal itself, then you're attacking it at its core, basically. And one of the methods that you can use for external use of urine is taking a compress. Basically, you just soak a rag in urine, and then you apply that to a part of your body that has some type of a skin condition. The level of conditions that you can treat is off the charts. You can treat gangrene. You can treat acne. You can treat hair loss even. You can treat burns, eczema, dry skin. I mean, the list of stuff goes on and on and on. So the reason why this is so beneficial is the toxins in your body that you're accumulating, they accumulate in the skin just like they accumulate anywhere else. So when you're taking drinking the urine, you're using that process internally, but you're also maximizing it by putting it outside of your body and allowing that process to be expounded outside as well. Excuse me one moment. Okay, I'm back.
He's back.
Yes, I'm back. So let's see, what else do I got here? Oh, allergies. This is amazing. So the immune system, the use of auto urine has biofeedback effects. It's you could use the term homeopathy or homeopathic effects. And for those of you who don't know what homeopathy is, basically it's this idea, which is very similar to a vaccine, that you can introduce a small substance of a contagion or an allergen into the body, and that very small substance will trigger a response within the body that the body then uses to acclimate to that substance, and so that it's prepared for it. So everybody's kind of familiar with this idea already. This idea that you can get inoculated or vaccinated with something, and then because your body recognizes it now, it's going to fight it in the future. Well, apparently this is a very ancient idea. The whole idea of urine therapy has a large root in Indian culture. And one of the things that I was researching when I was preparing for the show, I researched this practice wherein when merchants used to travel between towns, what they used to do is when they go to a new town, they would ask for a sample of the urine from the strongest, healthiest man or boy, and they would drink a small portion of that, or they would place it underneath their tongue for a few minutes. Now, the scientific basis for that is this. Underneath your tongue, you have glands, lymph nodes. Those lymph nodes are part of your immune system, and they can scan or identify compounds in your mouth. It's one of the reasons why your mouth is so important, and there's so many lymph nodes all the way down. Your tonsils are lymph nodes. That's another reason why your stomach contains 80% of your immune system, because the probiotic bacteria in your stomach help fight infection. So anyway, what they used to do is put it underneath their tongue, and what would happen is their immune system, their body would recognize the antigens inside the urine of the boy and then acclimatize themselves, and then they would basically inoculate themselves against any potential pathogens, viruses, whatnot. It is exactly how the use of auto urine works. One of the reasons why people who practice urine therapy, even if you're not doing a urine fast, one of the methods that you can do is just simply in the morning, you drink your first, all the water that you pass in the morning, all the urine that you pass, and it creates a biofeedback effect. A really good example of this is the use of allergies. So an allergy is caused by renegade white blood cells that inappropriately attack substances even when they may be of no threat to the body. Now let me just touch on allergies in general. An allergy would only happen if an immune system is out of balance in general. So if you're having any kind of allergy, it's because your immune system is out of balance in some way. If your immune system's in perfect balance and harmony, you would never have allergies, ever. So if you're having an allergic reaction, what's happening is there's a process that's happening in your body. Your body is releasing antigens. There's an actual autonomic response. So, for example, let's imagine a good example that they talk about in these books is cats, people who are allergic to cats. When you're allergic to cat and you're exposed to a cat, the cat dander, which is dry saliva, is introduced into your body, and your body recognizes it as something that it needs to have a reaction to. So what happens is these renegade blood cells start freaking out, and they start producing antigens. Now, these antigens of these white blood cells are going to create this reaction in you. So when you're actually sneezing and your eyes watering and whatnot, that's when your body's producing all these antigens, and they're depositing this in your urine. So if you urinate at the time, it's going to be like a snapshot of whatever your immune system's going through at the time. One thing that you can do is you can reintroduce that urine into your body. So you basically take the urine, and there's a case that I was reading where a woman, she had an allergic reaction, and what she would do, every time she would have an allergic reaction to the cats, she would take a small sample of her urine and she would put it in a dropper, and she would put the drops underneath her tongue for several hours throughout the day. And then as she went through this process, after so many days, eventually her body now recognized those antigens as those are the ones being the renegade, and actually produced antibodies for the renegade white blood cells. So that's exactly what happens. The renegade white blood cells are actually the things that are causing the allergic response, and by using the process of biofeedback and reuptake of your own urine, you're creating an antibody for the renegade antibodies, and you're basically curing yourself of the allergy, which is fascinating. So an allergic reaction is basically an indication that your body's immune system is already at some level of compromise. All right, let's see here. So the use of urine and drinking urine is going to sound really crazy to a lot of people. I would strongly suggest just trying to look into this idea, and if you're really open to it. I mean, just like any other information, if it doesn't resonate with you, move on. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything here. But I wanted to kind of discuss the mind aspect to this idea of urine therapy, because if you think about the idea of urine therapy and drinking urine to solve problems, or even using urine externally on your body to help your skin look better, whatnot, which you can do, you can apply it to your skin. You can. There's cases where people before they go to bed at night, they just bathe in urine. Contrary to popular belief, you're not going to stink afterwards. It's going to absorb into your skin after it dries, and your skin will actually look amazing, and you can let it absorb into your body overnight and then rinse afterwards if you're uncomfortable. However, you don't have to. Some people just leave it in their skin all day long. Again, it's not going to cause any smell problems. It's not a toxic substance, and it will continue to make your skin look great all day long. So what I wanted to address here, though, is this idea, the mind virus, that this substance is a waste and you can't use it in any way, shape, or form. If you're having that reaction, if you're totally rejecting this information, even though it makes logical sense on a left brain, logical, rational capacity, then that is revealing that there's a type of mind virus operating in your mind. You've got some type of control that's happening where you're rejecting this information. It's similar to this idea of the show that we talked about a few weeks ago in Transparency, that you create this false ideas about the world, these belief systems and world's view, and those belief systems, when they're confronted with truthful information or information in general, they're going to want to either reject it or try to reconcile it and bring it into your awareness. So if you're just in general, not just talking about the urine therapy, but distilled liquids. Distilled liquids are an amazing, amazing thing. They enhance the body's natural ability to detox. And if you're not okay with trying human urine, I know it's very difficult for myself to get through that hurdle, but I think it's something I'm eventually going to get through because I recognize that it's an internal block within myself. Just drinking regular old distilled water is amazing. You can get it at the supermarket. Sometimes it has a plasticky taste. That's okay. One of the distilled water is going to leach inorganic deposits from anything it comes in contact with. So what you're actually tasting is those inorganic constituents in the water, which are not going to be absorbed by your body because you're drinking this water. It's actually going to start to keep pulling stuff out, so you don't have to worry about it. As far as getting distilled water from the supermarket, you may need to look in a place other than the water shelf. The reason why you don't want to drink mineral water per se is because most mineral water, almost all mineral water, spring water, drinking water, whatnot, tap water, is dirty water. It's saturated with inorganic compounds. So to get back to the rain idea, rain is purest the water that is made by the earth, right? And then when the rain falls to the ground, it's absorbed, and then it accumulates constituents or minerals that are in the soil, and then it goes to the aquifers, and the aquifers accumulate minerals from the rocks and whatnot. So this a lot of the more popular water these days is mineral water, and people think they're getting like really good quality water, but in reality, as far as the health benefit to your water, it's not actually helping you at all. It's probably making your health worse, if anything, because you're adding more and more inorganic. You're adding more sugar into the glass, and it keeps making the sugar crystals bigger and bigger, to use the analogy I was talking about before. So we're coming down to the last few minutes of the show here. It has been an amazing show. I've been wanting to talk about this idea of distilled liquids for a while because it's just so amazing, especially when you consider the power of detoxification. So definitely take everything as far as that's concerned into account if you're going to start to consider this. If you have questions about distilled liquids and whatnot, there is an amazing group on Facebook called The Age of Aquarius. It is run by some very positive and inspiring people, and it's a group specifically devoted to distilled liquids, not just urine, but juicing and water and whatnot in general. So you can definitely go there. On the Silence in the Storm Facebook page, which you can go to by going to facebook.com/SITS-show. You will find the show link from today, and I will be posting some articles about distilled liquids in the show link, so you can look at that. You can also ask questions or whatnot if you have any about any of these things to myself via the Silence in the Storm Facebook page or whatnot. So
everybody have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for listening in. And check us out on Facebook.
Absolutely.